Welcome to another broadcast of Philosophic Perspectives on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are archived. You can pick them up at artistfirst.com. And now here's your host, Mr. Arthur D. Schwartz.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Nice to have you with us. I got a really nice show. Well, we have a really nice show tonight. It's entitled A Discussion of Spirituality and Religion with PreacherGirl. PreacherGirl is somebody I've met just very recently through the meetups. You know, I think she's a member of the Creativity Expo, which I've talked about a few times, and she has the meetup side as well. And I met her through, creative artists, basically in doing videos, movies, and I got into it because of my book. I'm also beginning to do some videos too. It's all associated with the book for me. But so I'm interested in working on a creative community in the Boston area, essentially. And so PreacherGirl, of course, is not exactly what you think about in terms of what I just said. She's not, but she actually is. I mean, I think spirituality is very creative. I mean, I think we're going to talk about the divine, and if there is a divine, and what the divine means, or what God means. That's what we're going to be talking about today. But I would actually say that I think creativity and spirituality are probably closely aligned. I mean, when we think about spirituality, we think about the infinite, the creativity of the universe, I think. But we can talk about that as well. So I'm going to introduce you to PreacherGirl in just a couple of minutes here. But I just want to share with you my thoughts about this, because she is somebody who comes from a religious background, and from that religious background, she finds need to become unorthodox and find solutions that might necessarily be black and white. If I'm interpreting her correctly, what I mean by that is just overly simple or doctrinaire. Things are not always so simple when we try to figure things out, and I think religion and counseling falls into that category. Actually, PreacherGirl is a teacher and a coaching and a coach. So she has the teaching and coaching ministry. And so what I was, just to continue my thoughts for a second, so in myself, I mean, I think we come from the same, kind of from different poles, because I'm someone who really has a very open-mindedness in terms of my approach to philosophy and spirituality and philosophy in general. And yet I find the need to come closer to some core beliefs as well. So perhaps she and I might have a meeting of the minds here. I'm not sure if I said that as clearly as I intended, but I'm sure it will come out during the course of the show. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on board to the Philosophic Perspectives radio show, PreacherGirl. PreacherGirl, how are you?
I'm doing good, thank you.
I explained how I met you, and I don't really know a whole bunch about you, but except I know you're very intelligent, and by the way, you run a very good meetup. I will say that.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's one of the better ones I've gone to. Very well organized, and the people the people that you attract, I think, are very, very good. Very, very good. And I've been to two of your events, and they've been worthwhile. We'll begin by talking. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what you're about your ministry, about what you're trying to achieve. I know right now it's an exciting time for you because you are actually in the process, I think, of forming a ministry, right?
Yes. Yes.
So why don't you just take some minutes and talk about what you're doing, and then we'll kind of take it from there. Okay.
Okay. So my ministry is in its beginning stages, but this calling has been for quite a while, quite some time. I actually went back to school to become a teacher, and it was during my student teaching that I realized that the teaching that I wanted to do was not in the classroom, or at least not in like public school. I believe strongly that I do have a calling, and that my ministry, the focus of my ministry, is returning people to a knowledge of God, of a relationship with God. I feel that people are definitely moving away from religion and towards spirituality. However, I feel that sometimes in the discussion of spirituality, God is left out, and there's this kind of void. And so, as I have, over the years developed a relationship with God, I feel like there's things I've learned on my own that were never sort of explained in church, and things that were just left out that I think would have been very, very important to my own personal development, things that I feel like have set me back. I don't think I've shared this with you before, but I personally struggled with anxiety and depression, and I have lots of friends who've also gone through similar things, and I feel like there is something wrong about, saying that, you are a Christian or you have this relationship with God, but yet you're struggling in these areas. You know what I mean? And I think it's one thing to have problems and issues, but to be debilitated by them, I think that hurts your witness. You know what I mean? As saying that you're a believer in God and you say that you have this strong faith, but then to be struggling with things like anger, addiction, and you see it, and it's very pervasive. And I don't say that to judge anyone, but I think that when you have a genuine and true relationship with God, you have the support that you are otherwise lacking. And so that's the goal of my ministry, to help kind of walk people through getting to that place where they can not only talk to God, but hear from God.
Right. Well, what you're saying there, I don't think, I think what you're saying is when you're struggling with anxiety and depression, and so it seemed to you paradoxical that you weren't where you wanted to be, so therefore there was a kind of some kind of a block, and so there's a contradiction because you wanted to be this person, but you weren't able to be that person quite. And so is that the paradox, that you weren't able to quite get there?
Well, I don't even want to limit it to just my personal struggle with anxiety and depression. I think that even if you're not struggling with those things, I think even if you're experiencing a lot of success in life, you can still feel that void that comes from being sort of spiritually hungry. You know what I mean? Like, when you acknowledge that you are, body, soul, and spirit, there's a need to fill that void. And I think that it's fine if we have conversation about, spirituality in general, but I feel like God needs to be returned to that conversation.
Oh, sure. Well, that's what we're going to talk about. So,
right.
Well, since we are talking about God, I'll just ask you the question which it always generally starts off as, and so it'll be that way here too. So the thing about God is many people, many believers, let's say, have different notions of God. I mean, I think we can all agree about that. There's different religions, different types of spirituality, and people within their own faith, unless they're strictly abiding by Scripture. I mean, sure, if you strictly abide by Scripture, then it's all on paper. But if you are if your belief is broader than that, so then the question is, well, if you ask what is God, you just can't repeat Scripture. You have to give an explanation of what God is. Mm-hmm. So, if I can ask you the question for really to get our conversation, the philosophical aspect of our conversation going. So what is God? Who is God? What is it?
Well, I think God as creator, I think that's the most, common definition of what is God. But I think that I've learned beyond God as creator to find that for me. So basically, as you were saying, it's very common for people in church to say, read your Bible, and that's how you'll know who God is. And I found that it's not enough. That not only is the Bible open to interpretation, but people have interpreted Scripture, and so you have the various, depictions of who God is and how He relates to us. And so, while we could maybe agree on the notion of if there is a God, then He would be the creator of all. However, beyond that one point, I think it becomes very, very individualized, and that picture gets painted solely by our interactions with God, like our actual experiences of God.
Right. Well, I completely agree with that myself. My use of God is very, very broad. So when I refer to God, for example, you and I did have a conversation a week or so ago, right? Or maybe 10 days ago. And, I would, call the universe God. In Taoism, which is the ancient Chinese philosophy/religion, Lao Tzu, the yin-yang, that's all part of Taoism. And so the Tao, the way of the universe, basically the Tao is the universe. In modern terminology, what Chinese call the Tao is really the universe itself. And so the way of the universe is what I would call, I have a lot of Taoistic tendencies or inclinations, but I don't call myself a Taoist, but I would say in that context, the universe is God. Mm-hmm. And the universe is wise, and so in Taoism, if you understand the way of the universe, you're in harmony with the universe, or you can easily see the transition in harmony with God. Isn't in most, probably all religions that, particularly the monotheistic religions, all would say that the goal is to be in harmony with God. So in that sense, you see what I'm trying to say? So
I agree.
There's a principle. There's a fundamental transcendental principle that we all want to be in agreement with. It's recognized as some kind of a power, some kind of a consciousness, some kind of a transcendental spirit of some kind.
Right.
And then we would call that God. And I actually, listening to you, I think you don't really disagree.
No, I don't. I don't disagree. I do believe that is the goal, oneness with God, and so I've done, when I was studying for a while, I was studying the law of attraction, and they talk a lot, they refer to the universe a lot, and they kind of use God and the universe interchangeably. And I didn't so much really have a problem with that when it came to talking about how we sort of basically manifest our reality through the things that we expect to receive, and just taking it one step beyond positive thinking, sort of like if you really expect these good things to happen, they will. And I do believe that of God, that's my experience of having faith in God. That if I do believe, that He has my back and that He has my best interest in mind, and that I can really trust Him. So I saw that, I did see that connection. My only thing with referring to the universe as God and God as the universe was just this, question. I heard you say that you can receive wisdom from the universe. I would just want to believe that there could still be that relationship component, because I think that's, I wouldn't say that's unique to the Christian faith, but it's definitely it's definitely a key characteristic that you can actually have a relationship with God, and that God is referred to as both father and friend, and there's a lot of other comparisons
right.
God makes between Himself and us. But so that was the only one thing. I don't know. Do you feel like that regarding God and the universe as the same? Do you feel like that allows you to have that kind of relationship, or do you even feel that's necessary, or what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, like I said, I think I consider myself to be a mystic. I don't consider myself to be an agnostic. I really don't, because I feel I believe in this in a transcendent consciousness. But the thing is about with me, I don't really feign to, to understand what God is. I have a belief of faith about something. The universe to me seems miraculous. It just, even though I like yourself, I think, from what you wrote, I believe in science, and you believe in science, but I also feel that there is more to it than just what we know right now. No matter how far science has come, it still has a long way to go, and it doesn't have all the answers clearly. And so I just think the universe is just too miraculous to have some kind of, now I would say guidance, but when I say guidance, I don't really look at it in terms of creationism. See, that's the thing. I look at it as more of a naturalistic thing. So for me, God is probably either an eminence that's actually embedded in the nature of reality, or God might be you and I and all conscious beings as the collective consciousness. My view of God, really, and I've written about this, is I would compare it to a newborn infant. And a newborn infant, is just a blob of flesh, right, when he or she's born. And then doesn't know anything. It's just, wiggling, doesn't know and crying, and it's completely dependent. And over time, the baby begins to understand its body, and develops sensation, able to see. Gradually, it's able to crawl and then walk, and you go through various stages of childhood, and then you go through adolescence, and you go through young adulthood, middle age, old age, the whole processes of life. And I think the universe is a bit like that, if we would agree. Well, now, according to the monotheistic religions, Judeo-Christian, would be the Big Bang is in line with that, because it's created. So in line with the idea of the creation of the universe, if that's the case, I'm not so sure myself that is the case. But if the universe had a creation, then I actually believe that, there's basically, to be simplistic, there's two sides, there's two aspects of reality. One is material and one is conscious. I think right from, if there was a Big Bang or if there was not, there is a conscious aspect of reality and a material aspect. And as the Big Bang or whatever it was proceeded, the universe was learning, and is still learning now. It's learning. And that collective accumulative learning, which probably is the collective, and we're all part of that, you, I, and all conscious reality, that is, to me, in my own, what I feel is God. But that's just my own speculation. That's what I like that. It sounds good to me when I talk about it. I feel good about it. But I'm not saying that's what it is. You see, to me, God is just speculation. But but here I want to come back, because I want to ask you this question. So to bring it back to a more of a pragmatic sense, which, because I know that you're really a teacher and you're a teacher, and how do you describe yourself? You said you're a teacher and a coach, right?
Yes,
teacher and coaching. Yeah. And a life coach. Yeah, so it's a very practical world you live in, and as is mine, in doing my hypnotherapy and philosophical counseling. It's so much, dealing with real life problems. But so bringing back to this, I love the famous quotation from that's attributed to Abraham Lincoln. And so the story is, someone asked Lincoln during the Civil War, it says, Mr. President, I'm paraphrasing, Mr. President, do you think God is on your side? Do you think God is on the side, of the Union?
Mm-hmm.
And Lincoln said, I would not ever have the temerity to say that God is on our side. I just pray that we are on his side. And see, that says exactly in one sentence what I just had said a whole bunch about, that we don't really know. We can only hope that what we do using our mind and our heart, that we're on God's side. But because we're human beings and because we're fallible, you never really know that. So that's the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that, obviously we can't speak for Lincoln. We don't know sort of what his beliefs were at the time. But I would say that for me personally, I would, if I was concerned with knowing, like, if something that I was doing or wanted to do was sort of, something that God would, approve of, or, would think, would, and I'll just say that, I don't sort of ask the question anymore, does God approve of me if I do X, Y, and Z, because I feel like I kind of know now that I have that unconditional love and approval from God. But I do know that my behavior and my actions can have, desirable or undesirable outcomes. So I can try to find out, what from God, is this a good move? But really, I think that, God guides us by our heart. So it's kind of like, where does your desire lie? Because part of my ministry is teaching people how to hear from God. And one of the ways that I have learned that God speaks to us is through our desires. And so it's kind of like, I can know that I really want to do this or I really don't want to do this. And I know that might sound kind of simplistic, but we do things every day that we don't really want to do for various reasons. And I think that that wisdom that we kind of pull out of heaven or the universe, that wisdom that we pull down from God, it really does seek to guide us towards our true heart's desires. And that's not something that I've ever really heard preached in church. I've heard things like, you can't trust your heart because the heart is wicked and things like that. That's paraphrasing, common, scriptures that get quoted often. But I do believe that you can know that something that you want, that it really is something that will be good for you, just because it's a very strong desire in your heart. And can I just differentiate really quickly? The desires of the heart are different from the desires of the flesh. I just feel like there's someone out there who's going to be like, no, you can't trust your desires. But I do believe there is a difference. But yeah.
Right. Well, so you know that. So this is a philosophical perspective. So one thing, the thing about philosophers, we question everything, right?
Yes.
So I love what you said, but this is one thing I would like to just throw at you.
Yes.
So like when you said that God. I'm not sure. I forget exactly what you said, but you were talking about in your heart. When you're doing the thing you should be doing. You said that, and so you never know how the consequences will work out. Mm-hmm. And there's a famous, you probably heard the expression of the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yep.
So that's certainly true. However, I would just go a step further because, yes, we can clearly see how even the best intentions, have bad consequences. But here's the thing. Because we are human beings, and because we're fallible and we don't know everything, not knowing everything does not that also include not even knowing everything about ourselves? Because
Definitely.
Definitely, right, exactly. I mean, of course, if you think about it, well, I mean, most people who are honest realize that, you don't know you. Sometimes your friend knows you better than you do because another person has a different perspective, you see, so they can see things that you don't about yourself.
Exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
I think I read that first when I was in college, and David Hume, I think he talked about how we don't know ourselves. But here is the thing I want to bring back to what you said. If we don't know ourselves, even though when you say, like, in your heart, you're doing the right thing in your heart, how do you can be absolutely sure that that's the case? Because if we don't really know ourselves, it's just like we have no absolute certainty about the world in general, and that includes us. So if you say, well, I know in my heart that I'm doing the right thing, forget the consequences. Isn't it possible that you think that you know in your heart you're right, but actually you don't?
Well, okay, so I would say that not taking away being right or having good intentions, it's more a question of what do you want. So it's about desires. It's not about. I would say that you can definitely get all kinds of confused and led astray, and like you said, the road to hell, I do believe, is paved with good intentions, and I think I've stopped doing what is right, quote unquote, you know what I mean, and started doing what I want. And I think that there is, it's almost sort of demonized in a way, pursuing what you want, but understanding that when you I'm trying to choose my words. When you develop a relationship with a benevolent God, it not only do your desires change, not only I would say that your desires kind of evolve, but when you know that it's okay to want what you want, you know what I mean, when you feel free to have that freedom, you don't see your desires as good and bad anymore. You know what I mean? So it's not really a question of is this right or is this wrong. It's more of a question of is this right for me in this season in my life? Is this where God is directing me through via my desires? Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. I was praying for a long time. Well, I thought for a long time to start a street ministry because I had seen all of these, street preachers who would, pass out pamphlets and they would preach on the sidewalk. And I always felt like, something's missing from this. Like, I feel like the intention is good. Like, as you were saying, I think the intention is good. But I don't know if they're reaching people the way that they would hope, because I feel like there's always this undercurrent of judgment and condemnation that not only deters people from knowing God, going to church, the whole nine, but it also sort of takes away from the whole message of at least what it means to be Christian, which is, I do believe, Jesus came to, as you were saying, reconcile us to God or help us to become one with God. That was like the entire purpose. And so when you kind of preach hell and condemnation and tell people basically all that's wrong with them, and you know what I mean, tell them how they're so unworthy of knowing God and having this relationship, I feel like I just felt personally like I could do something to change that. So I decided I'm going to start my own street ministry. And I struggled because I was like, I don't know, is this God's will? Should I do this? Am I doing this out of some sense of pride? Or, you know what I mean? Like, I was questioning that. And then I just had to come back to, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And what I concluded was that I want to see people encouraged. I want to see people uplifted. I want to see people feeling that desire towards, something greater than themselves. That desire for, and I've started the ministry. I've since started the street ministry, and I've seen it. I mostly sing. I don't preach and teach, but I sing, and you'll see people stop. You'll see people become quiet on the streets, and they'll listen. And like that wasn't ever the response that I thought I would get, but I do think that there's something that touches, the human spirit. And when it's kind of like a lot of street preachers that I see, they kind of assume that you're going to reject their message, so they have this defensive attitude. And so I just kind of went out expecting nothing, and I was so surprised, you know what I mean, by the reception. So I think, as long as you stick with what do I want, you know what I mean, then that's how you will know if you're doing the right thing, basically. The right thing for you, basically.
Right. Well, I want to return to, you started talking about what you want. I want to return to wants and needs when we get back. Mm-hmm. We could take a short break. And we'll pick up where we left off when we get back. We'll just be back in a few minutes.
In Ethical Empowerment, Virtue Beyond the Paradigms, Arthur D. Schwartz presents an ethical theory that is a framework for evaluating moral conundrums that go beyond legalistic rulemaking, dogmatism, and preconditioned thinking. The book is as much an ethical framework for unconventional ideas as it is for staying with convention. Ethical Empowerment is a manifesto of non-doctrinaire perspective. Ultimately, the hypnotic thinking of ideology and dogmatism can only be overcome by returning to the true source and essence of morality, which is nothing less than universal love. Discover how the philosophically liberating approach of the ethical empowerment can be applied to the range of ethical, social, and political controversy. Read about a plan to eliminate all political parties. Entertain the possibility of an overhaul of the patent system and its replacement with a system that rewards inventors while eliminating monopolistic control of patents and technological suppression. Many other transformative ideas are discussed in the book, including issues related to the monetary system, real estate, scientific paradigms, and a rational approach to conspiracy theory. While ethical empowerment will challenge your mind to consider new perspectives, the ethical challenge is always to keep the diversity, depth, and breadth of perspective within the boundaries of love. Ethical Empowerment is available at Amazon.com and most online booksellers in both print and e-book editions.
This is George Thorogood of the Destroyers, and you're listening to Artist First Radio.
You're listening to Philosophic Perspectives on the Artist First Radio Network. Have a question or comment? Send it to us at dj@artistfirst.com. And now back to your host, Arthur D. Schwartz.
Hi, welcome back, everybody. I'm talking here with PreacherGirl, who has a very, and it's so good to have you. And I think we're having a great conversation. I'm really enjoying it. Now, and when we left for the break, I mentioned wants. I would add wants and needs. I mean, we don't have to make that distinction. But the question of wants, so what it seemed to me was, you decide, well, you got to a certain point where you just wanted to do, you did what you wanted to. But the thing is, from my vantage, that's what you should always do. Actually, you should always do what you want to do, but wanting something doesn't mean just selfishly taking what, you desire, because a want can be easily regulated by an ethical choice. Well, I want that Mercedes-Benz, but unfortunately, I can only afford the tires. So therefore, well, it's okay. I'm not going to steal one. So but a want there's nothing wrong with a want so long as it, like any choice, should be regulated. Now, there's a lot of things we do without thinking about it automatically. That's fine too. But I think you're talking about sort of decision making. And when you said that, I feel that maybe you were talking about situations when you were doing things, you didn't want to do them, and you were feeling put upon, and you did them anyway, and you sort of liberated yourself from that mindset. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. And it's funny that you use the example of stealing a car, because I was talking to one of these street preachers once, and they were saying that part of the reason why it was so important for them to do that ministry was to let people know that they can't do things like steal a car, like that's wrong. And I feel like you don't really need to tell people that, things are wrong. You know what I mean? You don't have to tell people what's wrong. But as far as wants and how we achieve our wants, it's kind of you do want what you want. Like, say you do want that Mercedes, but in this in my opinion, well, basically what I would teach is that you rely on God to get you that Mercedes. That Mercedes is not something you can't want, because, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't have the money for it, you're like, oh, well, I guess I have to steal it now. No, you just pray and ask God and believe that God will respect that want, or that he will respond to that thing that you're asking for. And I personally don't believe that there's any limits or parameters for the things that you want outside of actually wanting it. But
right. Well, I would just rephrase it slightly, because I would put it this way: a person in that situation who is feeling, I would like to own that car, I'd like to have it, or maybe not, I'll just steal it, whatever you want to, however you want to put it. The thing is this. The way, in my view, you would look at want would be, I want not to steal that car. I want not to possess anything that I have no right to possess. So isn't that like, in the Ten Commandments about... not adultery, but what was it about your neighbor? Don't. Isn't one of the Ten Commandments?
Don't covet your neighbor's goods.
Yeah. Don't covet your neighbor. Yeah, right. Yeah. So in other words, that's exactly. So that's an age-old principle. It's okay to have something you would like to have someday, but you don't want to have it when it would be wrong to have it, because you're procuring it in the wrong way.
Right.
So you wanting is where it's both, like most things in life. There's errors of omission and errors of commission. So you can want to omit something that you would like to have, but you can't.
I don't really understand the omission, commission.
Omission is not doing something. Commission is doing something. Okay. So therefore, what you really want is omission. In other words, I really want not to commit a legal or a moral crime by stealing a Mercedes-Benz, for example.
Right, but why don't you want? Why don't you want to commit that crime? You know what I mean?
Because I want, just like we were talking before, because I want to be in harmony with the universe or with God.
There you go.
That's what I want.
Okay, so this is actually that what you just said. That is the basis for all religion, I feel like, is because you want to have oneness with God, because you want to have God's favor, you want to be in his good graces, you have to do certain things and not do certain other things, right? That's usually the setup usually. So
I want to get to that in a second, but just basically, what someone should want to be in harmony with the universe or with God, or however you conceive of that.
I believe it.
So that is what but not everyone sees it that way. I mean, I think you're being very generous to say that. That's what everyone. But I mean, a lot of people don't see things that way. But to me, if you aspire to be an enlightened individual and an ethical individual, it means that you aspire to be in harmony with the way things should be. And if you believe just like, stealing is wrong, which most of us do feel, then I don't want to steal. So therefore, I don't want the Mercedes. Maybe next year. Depends how the show goes. It depends how well the show goes, Scott.
Right.
Yeah, I might be driving that Mercedes.
Yeah.
Now, no, I wouldn't get a Mercedes.
Okay.
No. Now, but see, the thing here is, I wanted before I hand it back over to you, Preacher Girl, is that when you brought up the want thing, I got the feeling that when you decided you wanted to just do, what you wanted to do, and you kind of release that burden, the feeling put upon and all that, that perhaps you might have come to a realization that the particular form of Christianity that you were following was maybe a little bit too oppressive, and there was too much do's and don'ts. Is that fair to say?
Well, the particular form of Christianity, I've studied with the best of them. I've been a part of many different churches. I've attended services of many different denominations, and I found the same underlying thought in all of them, which is the basis of religion, and which is why my ministry seeks to depart from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So okay, but see, what I'm saying is because when you were talking about, you made this big change in your life, you thought, I'm going to do what I want to do, right? Right. So when you came to that realization, or when you came to that decision to change your life in a certain way concerning certain things, did you? What were you were rejecting something, right? When you said there was a shift in your life.
Yes. Yep. I can tell you.
Okay.
The shift was no longer I want to be good, or I want to be. I think you used the word ethical. It's not a desire to want to be that, because I realized that I am good in God's eyes, that I already have that favor, and that's how God sees me, that I need to come to see myself that way. So now my desire to, all of my desires actually come out of this desire to love, or just the desire to want something. So when you said it's nice to think that everyone should want to be ethical, and that everyone should want to, do the right thing. I don't think anybody does. I think that if you focus on what you actually want, God actually uses your desires to mold you into this better, say you do want to evolve personally. Say you really do want to just, love more, and just, it's really just about, serving your fellow man, and really, being, just a good person. And maybe that really is your ultimate goal. You don't get there by saying, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. You get there by evolving from the inside. And that comes through a relationship with God. That basically, you're not going to steal a Mercedes if you believe that the God you worship and serve is going to give you that Mercedes. You don't have to steal it. You might not have the money in your bank account. You see what I'm saying? Like, as you develop this relationship with God, your trust of God, you're seeing how God works in your life, and you're drawing this constant wisdom from God. It changes you from the inside, and it's not just like it changes you to make you want to be ethical. No, the focus is still on what you want. But I'm trying to think of a solid example for you. I really don't have the thought anymore. How can I become a better person? Well, no, that's not true. I do still have that thought, but I think it's actually a bad thought to have, because it makes us focus on our limitations. It makes us focus on our shortcomings. And I think that God would rather us focus on His strength and His blessings, because we can get so much. We can only get so much from our labor and from our efforts. But if we focus on the fact that we all have shortcomings, you know what I mean, that we're all limited in some ways, and that none of us deserves pretty much anything good, if we focus on the fact that God loves us, in spite of all that, and that that we can really and truly just be open to receiving all the good that God has for us. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it was it really was the learning about the law of attraction and things like that that really made me think that something is wrong with how we typically teach about God, and not even just that. I've had doubts since I was a kid about how at least how Christians teach about God, because there's this harshness. There's this harshness. One of the preacher of the pastor of the last church that I visited, he made reference to this quote that says, you know, I was sad that I didn't have shoes until I saw a man who had no feet, right? And I hear this a lot. But that he basically said that to say I should be happy for what I have, even if I don't feel I have a lot. I should just be thankful. And it's like, let me think about that for a second. Maybe you want shoes because you have feet. The guy with no feet ain't walking anywhere. You know what I mean? He doesn't need shoes. So it's a different type of want. You see what I'm saying? So if I focus on what I desire, you know what I mean? It just takes the condemnation out of it. You can desire what you want. You don't have to feel bad. You don't have to feel like, oh, I have to settle. I should just be thankful. Yes, be thankful for what you have, but expect more from God. And this is the basis of my ministry. I feel like we could all be a lot happier and a lot more at peace if we knew that God was a lot more generous and way more good than what religion has painted him to be.
Right. Well, I personally would look at that a little different way, because you see, when you want something, there's nothing wrong with wanting something for yourself. In other words, I think sometimes in religion, it's trained in such a way that it's all about altruism and compassion for others, which certainly is. But also there's nothing wrong with self-love. In other words, you love thy neighbor as thyself. Straight from the Bible, it includes loving thyself as well. And so love, if you love embodies self-love, which is not an arrogance, it's just loving yourself as a being and loving others. And so if you love yourself, you will want yourself to flourish and be the best you can be, to be as happy as you can be in all the ways that as practical that you can be, as much as for other people. So when we get back, we can take one more break. When we get back, I think we maybe, we'll see, but I think we might want to talk about self-love and love of others, which is a very common theme. Okay, so we'll do that when we come back, and we'll be back in a few minutes. See you then.
Okay.
This is Arthur D. Schwartz. Beliefs and disbeliefs can be very powerful. Much like philosophy, hypnotism is concerned with belief. Hypnotherapy, a practical application of hypnotism, may largely be described as the practice of removing false beliefs that form mental blocks to success, to happiness, and to well-being. In my hypnotherapy and philosophical counseling practice, I combine my work in philosophy with hypnotism in order to clear mental blockages that can occur on both conscious and subconscious levels. A mental block may be conscious or subconscious and can be expressed, for example, in the form of anxiety, low self-esteem or low motivation, bad habits, tobacco habits, weight gain, low performance, and much more. If you are interested in using hypnosis and the power of the mind to overcome mental blocks and barriers that have emerged in your life, please feel free to give me a call at 617-964-4800 or visit www.hypnosis.com. integralhypnosis.com. That's INTEGRAL hypnosis.com.
Are you a person who enjoys intellectual social interaction and finds digging deeper into the nature of things, from big issues to everyday life, an important part of the pleasure of life? Social Philosophizers is a Boston area social club for those who desire intellectual socializing. It's a club for both singles and non-singles, and for anyone who finds intellectually mingling to be the best form of social mingling. The club offers a variety of interesting venues such as philosophical get-togethers in private venues, book discussions concerning literature and philosophy, topical discussions over brunch or dinner, guest speakers, theater, after-work mixers, even long philosophical ruminations along nature trails or city streets, and more. If you live in the greater Boston area or occasionally spend time in the area, you can choose a cost-effective membership level that's right for you. Basic membership is free. Find the link on Arthur's Philosophical Perspectives show page at artistfirst.com, or just search socialphilosophizers.com. We hope you'll join Social Philosophizers today. That's socialphilosophizers.com. You are listening to Philosophic Perspectives on the Artist First Radio Network. Past shows are archived. You can get them at artistfirst.com. Back to your host, Arthur D. Schwartz.
Welcome back. I'm having such a good time speaking to PreacherGirl, and
Yes.
I'm not saying your first name.
Oh, it's okay. It's Crystal, but
Okay, now that you said it, okay, Crystal.
I saw you trying to tiptoe around. Thank you.
Well, I kind of get a kick saying this is PreacherGirl.
Yes.
So I like it.
Thank you.
Yes. So actually, this is in a way sort of a launch for your ministry, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yep.
So that's what an honor. So that's great, and it's a wonderful thing. Now, I think we want to, the show will probably last another 10 minutes or so, and to talk about this really wonderful theme that I'm immersed with in almost everything I do, which is the balance between, self-regarding and other-regarding, egoism and altruism, self-love and love of others. And of course, it crisscrosses philosophy and religion. It's such a powerful subject because love is so powerful, right? But
Yes.
the thing is, love is powerful, and you can see when love gets twisted how destructive it can be as well. And so, therefore, you can see like the misery and pain that people inflict upon themselves and on others. You might say is really part of this twisting of love, because for example, in what's going on, I'm not going to mention anything right now, but it's obvious. Okay, yes, Daesh or ISIS. Love of God is causing them to do the most horrendous and horrific things humanly imaginable. And so there is an example where, and it's so many other examples, of course, of the news today, in fact. And so where such bad things are being done and it's being justified. And
Right.
so I think from a religious and a philosophical perspective, that's really an interesting subject. And from the philosophical side, the novelist, the writer Ayn Rand, who was kind of a nutcase, but she did write a good book, an interesting book, Atlas Shrugged. But anyway, she was all about self-love, all about egoism, all about self-regarding interests. That's the only thing she really cared about. And so, and I think in religion too, the phenomena of love and its sort of how it can get twisted, if I can use that term, Maybe, having said that, would you like to comment on that theme?
Sure, yes. I think that first the problem is that self-love gets kind of overlooked. It's like love God, love your neighbor, and it's like as yourself. It's like an afterthought, as yourself. You know what I mean? So it's almost, you know, it's a given that you're going to love yourself. But a lot of people don't know how to love themselves. They don't know how to love. They don't even know where to begin with loving themselves. And then you're going to ask that same person who can't even love themselves to love someone else. And I think psychology, attests that when you have problems loving yourself, you really will have nothing but dysfunctional relationships with other people. And I think that the breakdown comes from not knowing who we truly are. And if I could read just a little excerpt from a book by RuPaul called "Working It." I didn't expect, you know, to find such wisdom in this book, but you know, he just reads like some kind of wise sage, and so I just had to share this.
Sure.
So it reads: "The truth is, you are a spiritual being having a human experience. The human part of the experience is temporary. Think of it as a T-shirt and jeans. Your spiritual being is not temporary. It is eternal, kind of like the sun and the moon. That's why the saying, 'You're born naked and the rest is drag,' couldn't be more true." And I read that because I think that was the beginning of understanding who I truly am. So when you try to love yourself based on what other people tell you are, and what other, you know, because we rely on that. It's like if you don't have a reason to love yourself, you're looking for that reason to come from outside of you. And I think that when it comes from the world and it comes from your parents, you know, people around you, you can get all different types of messages, and your reasons to love or not love yourself can change and flux. But when your reason to love yourself comes from something that's constant and eternal, like a relationship with God, then you have an anchor. You know what I mean? I can love myself because I know my true identity is as a child of God. I know that I am made in God's very image. So I can't be, you know, stupid, lazy, ugly, you know, any type of label that someone wants to put on me. I can't accept that as my true identity. My true identity has to be tied into love and truth because that's who God is. And so I think that that's the foundation of self-love. And that's what I've personally come to accept.
Right. That was a beautiful passage that you read. That's great.
Yeah, I'm glad you like that.
Yeah, very good. Now, so I like what you just said when you said because God is love. I would agree with that. I mean, with using God as I sort of made it my own private definition, as I talked about before at the beginning of the show. But here's the thing. So I just want to ask you this question. So so God is love. Let's take these words. You know, God, love, and good. Okay? The good. And let's kind of say they're the same thing for a second. Well, no, I don't know. They're not the same thing. So they all have different things. So let me just rephrase this. So let me ask you a question, Crystal. What takes priority? Good. What I'm going to say is good and love are identical. Okay, I'm going to say love equals good. Good equals love. Okay, okay. So, what takes priority? Good or God?
Well, I would say.
Or are they identical?
I would say they are identical. Yeah, I would say there truly is none good but God. And if you manage to produce goodness in your life or through yourself, then it's by the grace of God, I would say. But yeah, they're identical.
Yeah, but here's the problem with that.
Yeah.
Because particularly when you're dealing with sort of a biblical kind of thing with the biblical narrative, because God is definitely, the divine being or the divinity that is definitely, acting upon the world, right? God, does all kinds of things of anything you can imagine. So that being the case, would you say that God, wouldn't that make God above good? I mean, or could God be, because good is not a, even though you equated God and good, I did. In other words, when I said God, I said I equate God and love, good and love, and then you have God. Well, good and love, because that good and love, that's not a being, that's not an actor. That is, might call it an energy, you might call it a wisdom, you might call it understanding, whatever you're going to call it, but it's not a being. It's, let's just call it maybe an essence, for lack of a better word. But when you talk about God, as it is, as God is certainly in the Bible, New and Old Testament both, I mean, it's very much of an actor, right? God created the universe too. That's an act. So, is it possible? But you're saying, so why would it not be possible for God and good to come into conflict with each other?
Why would it not be possible?
Yeah.
Based on God being a person.
Well, for example, let's say, the story I'm thinking about most, this is one that's used before, it's the Abraham and Isaac story in the Old Testament, okay?
Yes.
And so Abraham was told by an angel from God to sacrifice Isaac.
Right.
It's Abraham and Isaac, right?
Yes.
That's okay. And he was totally distraught, but he said, he cannot go against God, and he was just about ready to smite his only son, or to smite his son. I'm not sure if it's only son, but to smite his son. And then suddenly the angel appeared and said, "Okay, just kidding." No, he didn't say just kidding, but he just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Didn't mean it. Just wanted to make sure you're willing to do it, because so long you've proven that you're going to do whatever God says, and so therefore you pass.
Right.
So therefore you don't have to kill your son.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We don't have time to talk about that, that part of the Bible, the Abraham and Isaac story. But do you see where I'm going? Because yeah, go ahead.
I feel like I do. I could be wrong, but I'm going to take a shot at it. I think that Abraham wasn't sort of, doing what God asked because of fear of being punished or fear of any type of repercussions. That Abraham was actually following through with this because Abraham now had a level of faith that said, okay, if I do what God's asked me to do, I know God has the power to raise Isaac from the dead. I know that God promised me that he was going to birth nations out of my loins, and this is my only son, so it was his only son. So I know what God has already told me. I know what I've already experienced with God. So if God's asking me to do this, I don't know what his will is behind it, but I'm going to do it because I know God is good. That is the conclusion that Abraham finally came to. So there's there's a connection. If God is good, I can trust and I can believe, and it's all going to work out.
Well, on that note, I think we will end this on a very joyful, happy difference of opinion.
Okay, all right. Sounds good.
Yeah, because I think God, and to the extent that there is a God, I think God is fallible. That's what I think. And God is like the rest of us, learning to get better. But so I feel God is, whatever God means, it's still a work in progress, just like you and I. But that's just my, again, like I said, that's just my point of view. So, but I really totally enjoyed having you on the show today, and
so did I. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been really a pleasure, and I'm just these papers that I'm just so unorganized. But I enjoyed having you, and I would like to have you again sometime.
That would be great.
You might participate maybe in one of our, we only did it once. We had a round table, like a group of people, and you'd be great on it as well.
Oh, that would be fun.
Thanks for coming by tonight. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
So actually, before we go, this is Preacher Girl, and Crystal, otherwise known as Preacher Girl. And is there anything you want to tell the audience about your new ministry, where they can find you, or anything of that nature? Are you ready? Or that's something we'll just...
Sure. Yes. So on my website, which was recently under construction, is now it's actually now published. It's askpreachergirl.com.
Askpreachergirl.com?
Yes, askpreachergirl.com is where you can find me. And also, I have a YouTube channel called PreacherGirl.
So it's askpreachergirl.com. It's just one. It's one. There's no it's all one. No dashes or anything. askpreachergerl.com.
Yes. Yep.
And the YouTube channel is it's the slash
It's just PreacherGirl. Yep.
Oh, great. Okay, so you can find her at askpreachergirl.com, and her YouTube channel is YouTube / I think you put the user in there. I think it goes in anyway, but
it's just PreacherGirl for the YouTube channel, and I can also, if anyone would like to email me, my email is askpreachergirl@gmail.com.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so I think this concludes tonight's broadcast. I would like to appreciate Preacher Girl very, very much. I had a great time, and we're going to do this again. So thanks for coming aboard once again. And so this concludes tonight's broadcast. For links to my book, Ethical Empowerment, my philosophical counseling and hypnotherapy practice, and the Social Philosophizers Club, please visit arthurdschwartz.com. And this is Arthur D. Schwartz reminding you to live well and think deeply. So until next time, good night, everybody.